Hello. Good to see you again this evening. It's been a nice day. It's been kind of windy today, and I like almost all kinds of weather, but I do not like it when it's windy. Because of where we live, it just kicks up dust and dirt everywhere, but it is, I suppose the nice thing about wind is if you're inside and you have windows open, if it's not windy, you usually don't get a nice breeze kind of going through the house. And when it's windy here, we can have the windows open and it does kind of blow through the house. So that is kind of nice. So I take back my complaint a little bit. I didn't really have anything of great interest, or at least commentary of any kind, like I perhaps typically do. I did want to share some of my poem, The Gryphon. So I've talked about this a couple times, but I had started writing it's supposed to be a medieval style allegorical epic poem, something like Pierce Plowman. I'm getting a lot of inspiration from like Pierce Plowman, and then of course references and allusions to other things like Tolkien and to Dante's Divine Comedy, and again Pierce Plowman. And it just because of what I was reading a lot of medieval literature, about medieval poetry, and then it kind of moved into naturally where I was interested in reading about King Arthur, and some of that actually has been from some recent publications, thinking like the Lost Tales of Sir Galahad. I bought it because there's one chapter in there that Malcolm Guite wrote this poem about one of the Lost Tales of Sir Galahad, and that was the reason I bought it, but I've enjoyed some of the other little stories in there. And then of course I'm excited for Malcolm Guite's retelling of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. He's working on that. That's supposed to come out over the next handful of years. So anyway, somehow my poem went from a third-person narrative to a first-person narrative, and then the character became Sir Lancelot. So if you recall in Le Morte d'Arthur, Sir Thomas Malory, towards the end of his life, Lancelot, after, I don't necessarily want to spoil everything for you if you haven't read it, but Lancelot comes to the end of his life and he has no one. People have died, left him, are his enemies now, and his love is scorned. And so he rides off and he comes upon a hermitage, and essentially he spends out the rest of his life as a monk, as a monastic. And I was always puzzled by just like the switch, how you go from just like being like sad that all of this really awful stuff has happened and some of it or a lot of it is your fault, to that turning into this really sincere, deep, like spiritual repentance. So I was always very interested in, or I was at least initially struck by kind of the gap, the jump that seems to take place. I think for a medieval person, the jump is more intuitive than I think for us. All that to say, my poem, The Gryphon, is currently subtitled The Repentance of Sir Lancelot. And I have this in kind of a finished state. It ended up being about 1,000 lines. And I thought I might just read it's in 8 parts. I thought I might just read the first part here to you, and I hope you like it. I'm currently working on kind of getting this into a format where I can send it to publishers. I've sent it to two publishers at this point, and heard back from one and haven't heard back from the other. So it's still very early. So anyway, perhaps you'll enjoy this. Again, this is The Gryphon, The Repentance of Sir Lancelot. This is Passus 1, Part 1. Our God a garden planted first, and in 6 days he finished it. The 7th served for Sabbath rest, and on the 8th the grave he quit. In a garden guilt was first arrayed. And since our sad ancestors' sin, the same beguiling snake of old in gardens seeks our wills to win. I named that knight of honor great, whose courtesy most fine was called, who fought with feats of gallantry, and save a few my fame enthralled, had kept my care from fair Elaine, of whom was born the world's best knight, and loved instead that gracious queen who loved her lord with fervor slight. By love I led the queen away from her own lord and lawful love, and did a debtor base become to Arthur king and God above. I, Lancelot, would liefer tell a fable passing fair to you, how sin had sapped God's light from me, and how it was restored anew. A flaming sword expelled our lot, away from our intended hearth, but back were beckoned to that glade a garden gifted in our dearth. I need must now with lengthy words relate a tale in Jesu name. This one shall I to you describe, by boon begun I blessed became. One morning, when soft was the sun, I clad in cloth to ride from her. From Almesbury she, a promised nun, I weary went, a weeping cur. Sweet slumber slipped away from me, as I'd not deigned to drop my eyes. Such sorrow still from love's sharp loss had led my lamps to weep and cry. In dazed despair was my escort. I raced or rode as in a swound, until a tree branch quite unseen unhorsed me hard onto the ground. My sight and sense abruptly failed. I lay along that forest length that stretched o'er slope and valley shade, and sleep compelled my feeble strength. I lay till light began to dawn, my sense disturbed in dolesome dreams. Then wit awoke, and I arose, all bathed in bright sunlighted beams. As sunlight struck my eyes, I saw, with sight and skill to greatly see, for I was ware of that whole span from Logres land to Italy. My view then veered to higher vaults, the heights of heaven I then beheld. The planets pranced and spun for love, and seas of stars like water swelled. Then back I bent with earthward gaze, and now the scene that near I drew was home in whole but still removed. This strange story I'll tell anew. A kingly court my eye now caught, it shone with fay and elfin light. Its title told is Unity, a Tor atop an island white. To court there came 3 knights at call, who teach those truths that lead to life. Their names Hope, Faith, and Charity. Was still in dreams I saw this sight? A shining shield each had in hand, and each exposed their heraldry. On Faith's was shown 3 knights astride a single steed, the Trinity. Now Hope's, a hand that held a scroll displaying dictates from the Lord, with wine and oil and tuppence decked, was Charity's, whose love restored. This doughty 3 whose deeds demand the maids of court to magnify and give the grand and gloried band their due of dote and ardent cries. They swiftly strode to king's tall seat, the ruler's reason to command each knight of noble courtesy to wend their way throughout the land. He wished they would a sinner find and teach him terror of his sin, instructing him in justice fair by temperance turn from passions grim, and free from foes by fortitude, by prudence poised to walk in light. This man by mode and method firm need veer from vice, by virtue fight. Their flasks were filled in pouches packed, with bread and wine to break each fast. One blight or bared would neither be, for full and fresh they'd firmly last. As such were girt with sharp-edged swords, they fit to ride they forthward flew from Unity on Avalon. They marched o'er moor at morning new. This is passus 2. I'll read a little bit more. Their horses rode o'er the water, far over hill and under tree, until they trod on the same track and mildly marched on up to me. That sinner they were searching for was me who measured great and wrong. I watched them wend their way past me. They called me quick to come along. I rubbed from rest my sleep-filled eyes and wondered why they fain would see me rise from rest that did me good. For grave not good your fate might be. That one whose words were filled with doom was Hope, who held my gaze until I heard what he, whose help is faith, did say to still my daunted will. With need enormous must you come, and follow freely we who can, assist your soul in its defense, from wrath and hell's unceased remand. Condemned, I quailed from their decree, and wished they would my plight to aid. I begged this band on bended knee to flee this fate that I had made. Then Charity, whose charge is love, admonished me of sloth's delay. If knew you now what wretch you were, why would you waste the while away? Of Judas' drear and dismal end, did not you know his somber shame? His grief secured no gifted grace, for simple sorrow ends no aim. Be pleased, you prophets, proffer help. I see that surely I was base, to weep and whinge while not inflamed to love that hope of faith's embrace. But do indulge a doubt I own. In dreaming days do you attend, or Britain's bounded lands affect? A dream your party must portend. If meet we marry on that main, this common called your British course, then does our discourse matter more than if imagined bodied forth? But shall I share the answer wished? Assume the strangers we you do, but where are we the stranger you? All said Hope, who held my eye anew. For this fair land, resuming said, ill-born by you has ever been, will always be more home to us, for our affairs are further in. Then faith, now fain I would depart, this slope and shaded canopy, we must now march to our object, postponing questions presently. Anyway, that's the first two parts. Each of the individual parts they're not all equal in size. Some are much longer than others. But I have a reason for having it separated in such a fashion, and I suppose I could be convinced of organizing that differently. But this was kind of a first attempt at something like an epic poem. You'll be able to tell that I used alliterative verse. I really enjoyed Tolkien's his translation of Beowulf, and he maintained alliterative verse in that. I think he does that in his Selleck Spell as well. And I just in English, I just like the way alliterative verse sounds. So I did that, and then it's also written in an alternating rhyme with iambic tetrameter, which I also picked up from Tolkien, tried to emulate in that way. So I hope you enjoyed that. If you'd like to hear more, I suppose there's I could be convinced someone could twist my arm enough. But until then, thank you for listening. Again, I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll see you next time. We're actually approaching Holy Week, and so we probably won't have a chance to see each other this coming week, but I hope to see you the week following when we are still celebrating Easter. So until then, see you.